The goal is to get the project done on time and on budget. The overall schedule is the plan from notice to proceed to project completion, and that's developed by the project team early on, and it is the guide for the project. Once you start building the project, then those 2-week, 3-week look-aheads become the predominant thing used, particularly in the field.
If a schedule isn't maintained, the project will not make money. The owner will not be happy, and therefore you will not get another project with that owner, and therefore it's a lost cause. Schedule is absolutely critical on any project.
Schedules drive all our projects, and in most cases, in all cases actually, owners are really looking toward that end state because of what the revenue impact has to them getting into the building, whether it be an office building where a developer's trying to get at least, or whether it be a hospital where they need to turn revenues with the surgical suites, etc.
Schedule will dictate when you award your subcontractors. Schedule will dictate when work on the project has to start, when it has to be finished. Everything revolves around a schedule.
The project manager needs to look that entire schedule over to make sure that he or she is very familiar with the entire project and not just the beginning part of the job.
It's not just are we on time, are we also spending the right amount of money, okay, and are we getting the productivity that we want to out of the manpower.
And by the way, when we talk about loss of productivity, from my point of view, that's loss of profit first. After that, it's a direct loss to the job, but it starts out being a loss of profit. So when you have a loss of productivity on the job, you're eating up your profit, and it never comes back.
You're taking your 3 resources, money, time, and manpower, and tracking them as they actually take place, in terms of how many men are for each trade, what the time frame is taking place, and how much money. And what we stress to our people, that's a very, very valuable tool to you. Besides the regular day-to-day schedules and 60-day look-ahead schedule, which we use, that tool is very valuable because as you go through the project, if you're tracking it correctly, it can start to tell you whether there's a money problem, manpower problem, you need more manpower. You can't put 500 people in a room to finish it in one day when you're supposed to have 500 man hours and it's spread over a period of time. So we tell them it's important that they use that tool to track the money that they're spending, and is it tracking the way it's supposed to? Time, manpower, and money. It can really help you keep a project on schedule. Or for that matter, if you start to drift, where's my correction? Is it money? Is it manpower? Is it time? Do I need to adjust one or the other? And of course, then what you have to factor into it is that any project has, you get hit with changes. How does the changes factor into those particular resources also and make the adjustments as necessary?
It's a common problem in the industry where the project team, they're using the schedule as a tracking device. They put information in, they're always looking behind them in history. But one of the greatest benefits a schedule can give you is looking ahead, because what it will do, if it's used correctly, it will put flags up when you have a problem, and you want to always be looking 1, 2, 3, 4 months ahead for those flags. So once you see that flag come up, the project team can get together and do something about it. They can say, what are my options? Can I build this a little different? Can I sequence a little different? And you don't wait until you're right on top of the problem and you can't fix it.
To me, scheduling, if you plan, and you've always heard the adage, if you plan the project right, it'll run a lot smoother than if you don't.
I've certainly, in my 30 years of working with schedules in the industry, what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of good software programs around, very, very qualified construction people from the field all the way through the executives. The difficulty is getting both the software, the scheduling programs, and the people together to create a good schedule, good updates, and using it correctly. And what I'm finding is that and it doesn't matter whether they're small contractors, medium, or some of the biggest contractors in the country. I'm seeing that they're only using it about 75% of its capability. They're not getting that last 25%, and unfortunately that last 25% is probably the most important, because what scheduling that's available today in the construction industry will do, it will give you a powerful tool to help you find the problem and solve the problem and give you alternatives.
to me, it's really the planning and scheduling part of it, and it's that upfront planning on how you're going to buy the project out, how many packages you're going to have, when you're going to have them bought out. It's how you're going to set up your site and the mobilization and logistics to your site, what type of subs you're going to need for various works, and how far you break down different packages. That's the whole planning process that needs to start very, very early in design.
The project manager needs to make sure that when they bring the subcontractors on board and they get their scheduling information and in the process of signing them on with their contracts, that they get their commitments, their scheduling information, put it into the schedule and get them to sign off on the schedule. So the subs and the project manager, superintendents, everyone has made a commitment that this is the way we're going to build the job.
The schedule itself is kind of the output from that whole effort that you use to monitor the project.
And of course, if the project manager does the schedule themselves, they will obviously know a great deal of detail, because they have to look at the drawings and look through the specifications, especially the technical specifications regarding all of these subcontractor divisions of the work. So they become, right away in the very beginning of the job, familiar with the entire job, even things that are going to take place months later on a big job, maybe even 2 or 3 years later.
The planning part of it drives the schedule. I mean, you need to know how you're going to get the drawings and how you're going to bid the job before you can even start planning on the subcontracts. You need to know basic milestone dates to back into those dates. But it's that whole planning process that I think is as important, if not more important, than the logic ties between a couple activities.
As plan schedule, and again, it's called the as-plan schedule. It's also called the initial schedule, or in computer language, the base schedule. That's an early-on schedule, and it shows, it's worth a great deal, because it shows how the contractor intended to proceed with the direction of the work of the job, and of course the incremental scheduling and various types of start and completion of groups of activity or areas of the job. So that's very, very important in terms of the original intent of how the contractor intended to pursue the job in accordance with the contractor's bid and ultimately the contract.
If you're not following the plan for the big picture, when you start looking at the little increments, you're going to go off track.
And if there's a big disconnect between your schedule and what's going on out there, and you're ignoring the schedule, chances are you got a problem that you may or may not be admitting. And of course, if you ever have to come back later and justify your position, having a schedule that's realistic and updated and current is key.
And actually, I've probably done slightly over 1,000 CPM schedules for 1,000 construction projects. So, and I can assure you, I don't ever recall any of them being the same at the end of the job as they were at the beginning. Once you've got the schedule, whether it's a bar chart or a CPM schedule or some other type of schedule, the real worth of it is to use it. You wouldn't think about buying an air compressor without knowing that you're going to be able to use it on the job and in fact doing it. So the schedule ought to be the same thing. If you're going to develop a schedule, and I think you should on every job, you should use the schedule.
Another thing to do is to update the schedule. I think project managers too easily can let a schedule, they'll start thinking of it as something that's just a technicality, that has no meaning, that's divorced from the job. My guess is that if you can keep the schedule updated, you're running a better job than if you can't.
It still amazes me how many contractors have schedules and the updates and changes really aren't shared with the subcontractors. I know as strange as that seems, but many times it happens because everybody gets busy and there's a notation sent out and then they're expected to be there and they're not there and there's delays. So that's why the schedule is so obviously very critical, because it ties into so many other items within the work.
Let's look at it this way. I consider a well-drawn CPM schedule in its least form a job site meeting agenda. It has all of the activities in to go over. And if you just, and they're timely, they're within a given month. So if you take a particular month like May and you update that schedule, you're going to be talking about activities that were previously or presently scheduled to either start or continue or be complete in the month of May. So you've got an agenda of what's going on that job site in each and every area of the job, each floor, each equipment room, site work, and so on, including procurement, those items that need to be bought, submitted, and delivered to the job.
You also should include your purchasing schedule as part of your critical path, because the two of them tie together very definitely from the standpoint that if I have an item on a critical path, I need to know when I need it on the job. I need to know how much time they need for fabrication. I need to know how much time they need for shop drawings. And by working backwards, by getting your critical path together and knowing when the product is needed on the job site, you can then work backwards, add it into your critical path, the time that's needed beforehand to make sure that occurs in the proper sequence.
Executives of construction companies, the project managers, the superintendents, and the owners and architects still need to get together and make a serious commitment in the beginning of a project that they are going to focus on the schedule and they're going to use the schedule rather than just produce it and put it in the file and look at it at the end of the job if there's a problem. Use it during the project, use it for what it can be used for, and solve your problems early. I know I do that as for a living, and it works. It really works if you get the team's commitments.
It's not a sin to finish the job early.